That just tells you how much was there. Like that, if you could sell that much weed and buy a house,
Yeah.
they were that was a serious, legit like plane. Like that was
Yeah.
no that wasn't your cousin Pookie out there
Right. This was like some cartel.
slanging like dime bags. This was
Yeah.
real.
Hey, adventure lovers, welcome back to Books and Boulders. We are your virtual book club for outdoor adventure reads. I'm Melanie,
And I'm Tiffany.
and we're two Black lady climbers obsessed with books and the outdoors. We've been reading Lynn Hill's book, Climbing Free, for the past couple of weeks. Boop, 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 boop. This week, we are discussing chapters 7 through 9. Is that right?
That is correct.
Making progress. I think after this, there's 4 more chapters.
Yeah.
But yeah, so make sure to follow and subscribe. Watch us on YouTube. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Yeah, I guess let's get into it. How are you today?
I I'm okay. I mean, it's just been so cloudy and so rainy that my energy is like non-existent, and all I want is to be outside either climbing or honestly gardening.
Yeah,
And I can't do either. So I'm
really.
just so over this like weird period, but I feel like after next week we'll be good.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I feel like East Coast spring is like that though. It's so back and forth and up and down. So yeah, I feel you. We fortunately, I think the weather has been like panning out here. Like it honestly, I feel like New Mexico low-key didn't even really have a real winter. Like I will say, I feel like a lot of people think that New Mexico doesn't have winters, but we do actually get like pretty cold here and have like I think a true winter.
Is
But
is a true winter snow? Do y'all have the snow?
it snows here
And not in the
rarely.
mountains. Wait, are there mountains?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's like the Sandia Mountains, which are about 20 minutes away from the center of Albuquerque, but it snows here pretty rarely. It doesn't stick. It'll snow maybe like 2 or 3 times in a winter season, but it doesn't really stick. But if you go up to Santa Fe, which is just an hour away, but much higher elevation, then the snow will stick. You'll get ice on the ground. So yeah. But this year it didn't even really get cold. Like it was like maybe it was a mild winter, I would say.
So you
Um,
wasn't bringing out the parkas like
no,
we out here on the
no,
subway. Yeah.
I
That
had it
that
pretty easy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I'm headed to Orlando in a couple weeks,
Ooh,
and it's like 90 degrees out there.
wow.
And I really don't think I could live somewhere that is hot all the time. I
Yeah.
don't. I'd say that I say, or at least not in the United States.
Mhm.
Correction. In the United States, I don't think I could do that. Maybe in another country, but
Yeah.
I I don't. It's not that I like seasons, but I don't want to be hot and sweaty and sunburnt and yeah, we get sunburnt, y'all, for those who don't
Yeah,
know. But
it's
like
true.
I just don't. I don't know. And then heat just makes you drained.
Yeah, it
It's
does.
almost like now, while it's rainy and cloudy, I am low energy, but
Yeah.
I feel like it does the same thing when we're talking about the yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I could be
Yeah.
wrong, but I just feel like, and then it's kind of this something to look forward to. It's like spring, and I start to see my little buds popping out, and flowers
Oh,
are coming. It's just
cute.
something about that nice little transition. And I
Yeah.
did start. I did start another YouTube channel for anybody who cares, called
Ooh.
Seeds and Sins.
Oh my
I know
God. That's
I know
exciting.
I have one episode and I am gonna post every week, and it's gonna be very raw, rough and rugged, and I don't care. It's really just about my gardening.
Oh my
But I
God.
hope that when I go climbing and on climbing trips, I can check out different gardens and just see the
Yeah.
world.
Are you okay?
And
Sorry. I don't want to get off topic. Well,
we're
we're
always
on
off topic.
topic, but are you a houseplant? Are you a houseplant kind of
I am
person? Or?
I am a bit of a plant mom, but I'm
Okay.
not that deep. I have all super low maintenance plants. I travel
Hmm.
way too much to have plants that need too
Yeah.
much care. Like
Yeah.
I'm talking mostly snake plants. I
Yeah.
have I mean like 90% snake plants in my house. I
Right.
have a ZZ plant,
Nice.
some air plants that somebody gave me that I like because they look like little locks.
Yeah.
I
Cute.
don't. I did just lose a plant. So,
Oh, rest in peace.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I knew it was rotting. I knew something was
Uh,
happening, and I finally just, I said, you know what? Let's stop.
yeah.
Let's stop. I'm much
The
more of an
mercy
outdoor
killing.
gardener. Yeah, yeah. To be honest, if I had someone to give my monstera plants too, because
Mm.
they don't get enough sun, and I bought them because I thought they were cool and that their leaves were gonna split, but they don't get enough sun in
Mm.
my house, so I'll
Mm-hmm.
never see those perforations. So I really want to
Mm.
just like, go down to the plant adoption agency
Rehome
and yeah,
it.
I just feel like they're not living their best life. But
Yeah, I hear that. Oh, um,
yeah,
cool.
so
Well, I'm super excited to check out more about your gardening. We can talk offline about all of my gardening questions because I'm also trying to start a little garden situation. But yeah, that's very exciting.
we're like what midway point with this book. These
Yeah,
are
so it
some
has 13 chapters.
yeah, and
So
so now
after
we're at
this, a
like
little half.
7.
Yeah. Well, we went through 9, so yeah, we're a little more than halfway. But yeah, it's this these 3 chapters were crazy. I was like, wow, okay, we're in the thick
And
of it
not what
now.
I thought, honestly, not where I thought they were going to go just by
Yeah.
reading the titles of the
Right.
chapter. I was like, "Oh, this is what we're talking
Yeah.
about?" Okay.
Yeah. It got real. I don't know. Maybe it might even warrant a little bit of trigger warning, especially in chapter 9,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
but yeah. Yeah, I guess we can kind of just dive into it. So, chapter 7, Big Wall Thrills. I'll give a quick summary. So, let's see. Chapter 7, Big Wall Thrills. This chapter. This chapter was wild. Okay, so without naming it as such, Lynn kind of basically talks about living the dirtbag lifestyle. That
Yeah.
has become so interwoven in climbing culture. And I mean, reading this book, it's like obvious that dirtbagging was kind of like the origins of climbing culture. So if you're not familiar with dirtbagging, basically what it is kind of living on really small budgets. Lynn said she lived on $75 for an entire summer. And I know
Yo.
money was Tiffany said no.
Yo. I mean, I'm a budgeter, but
Yeah.
that's low budget.
Yeah. And I know money was different back then, but I mean, it couldn't have been more than like $150 today. Like right? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it was still
Was
a
this
very
late 70s ish,
yeah.
early
Yeah.
80s?
Yeah. So yeah, $75 for an entire summer. But yeah, dirtbaggers, they just lived out of their car or camped the entire summer, made just enough money to continue to climb. And so some of the means of survival that she talks about were people just picking up odd jobs, collecting cans and sending them to the recycling center. I think she said you earn like a nickel for each can or something like that. So people would literally go into dumpsters and collect cans. Dumpster diving, scarfing was a new term for me, where basically, because Yosemite was such a popular tourist area, so many people would eat like half of their meals. Tourists would eat half their meals and either throw the rest away or leave it behind. And so scarfing was basically eating people's scraps that they left over. One of her friends thought somebody was done with their meal and ended up eating it. And the man was coming right back to it. But yeah, people would join rescue teams just to avoid camp fees, which feels wild to me. Like,
Yeah.
if you're gonna join the
Then you
rescue
can just
team, you
yeah.
just get a job.
But if that job is not right next to the wall, that's the
Yeah,
problem.
Facts. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure the Park Service, it seems like they had a very contentious relationship with the Park Service. Like, it feels like they were kind of homies, but also not. So I guess it probably wouldn't be so easy to join the Park Service. But yeah, joining the rescue team. I mean, what's nice about it, because my partner's on the rescue team, and I think what's nice about it is that, like, you're not working all the time. Like, you get on call like once every so often, but when you do get on call, it's like, it's not easy work at all.
You out there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as someone who's been rescued, it doesn't look like
it's not like a chill job. But yeah, petty crime, shoplifting, siphoning gas, dining and dashing. They were just out here scraping by, doing whatever they had to do to survive.
Anything they had to do to climb.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, honestly kind of begs the question for me, like, what did these people do for health insurance? Like, it just feels like such a wild time.
Yeah. Do you know that I just discovered that, like, if you try to get life insurance and they ask you, do you rock climb?
What?
Yes, I did not know that.
Wow.
They like asked the question. Luckily, I got health insurance before I got into rock climbing, so
yeah,
I'm good. But
health insurance or life insurance?
Sorry, life
Okay.
insurance.
Okay.
Life insurance is.
Oh.
They will be a little bit. They will question whether they're going to approve that policy.
Do they ask about other sports too? I would assume.
Well,
so.
yeah. So it doesn't just say rock climbing. It actually is rock climbing, scuba diving.
Scuba diving, huh?
Skydiving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think scuba diving would be that big. I didn't know scuba diving was that high risk, but
yeah,
I do know that when I went scuba diving, they did tell me, like, don't do this too fast. Don't come up too fast or your head will explode. And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I do remember that. Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, scuba diving. I want to try that again. I've only done it once, but it was really, really cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, so that's kind of like that's the scene for this chapter. That's the lifestyle these people are living out in Yosemite Valley. And she talks about one really major thing that happened that ended up bringing people a lot of money. And this was the plane crash of 1977. We should definitely watch Valley Uprising, because so much of this I think they also cover there, and it's just really interesting to see a visual of the story. But the 1977 plane crash, if you haven't heard about it, a marijuana smuggler's plane went down, and everybody on board died. Because of the season and the weather conditions, a recovery was delayed for months. I'm not sure exactly how much weed was on board. I tried to find numbers of it. I think from what I read, there was like maybe an initial rescue effort, and then or not a rescue effort, but an initial, like, the authorities went up there to kind of like do a recovery, right? Mm-hmm. And it was just like they realized that it was just too difficult, so they decided to postpone the rest of the recovery for a couple of months later into the spring. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly how much marijuana was on board, but I think it was in the high thousands of pounds. I think I read somewhere that it was like 240-pound bales of marijuana, and many of those bales. So for a lot of climbers, it ended up being a rags to riches story. Yeah. When climbers found out that the Park Service wasn't going up to do any recovery, they took advantage of it, and several people made a trek up into this kind of remote area in the valley to loot the left behind marijuana. Some of it was soaked with airplane fuel, so they were risking their personal liberty and also their
health for those who decided to indulge.
Yeah. So that sounded pretty wild. But yeah, climbers sold it. It was enough. They earned enough to purchase climbing gear. Some people purchased cars. Some people were able to purchase homes, which is like wild.
That just tells you how much was there. Like that. If you could sell that much weed and buy a house,
yeah,
that was a serious, legit, like, plane. Like that wasn't your cousin Pookie out there.
Right. This was like some cartel.
Slanging like dime bags. This was real.
Yeah. So I don't know. It sounded like a really wild time. Lynn mentions being tempted to get in and cash in on all of this, but deciding not to. And I wonder if it was just like intuition that kind of made her decide not to, or what exactly it was. But she kind of decided this isn't for me. So
Morals, maybe.
morals. Yeah, I guess that's a good call.
Some of us goody goodies are just like too much of punks, and
Yeah.
because trust me, I'm sure she wanted a new harness and new rope
Sure.
and gear, and but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think she was just like, this is blood money. It's enticing, but I think she seems like a very, from what I'm reading, it seems like she's a very spiritual person, and I feel like she has a lot of like, yeah, I feel like spirituality seems to be like a compass of hers, and I think she just mentions like, yeah, karma and just feeling like something about this doesn't feel right and kind of leaning into that. Um but yeah, some people obviously went up, cashed in, but months later she's like, I'm really glad that I didn't do any of this, because it seems like karma is coming full circle, and
yeah.
people who did this are having like strange things happen to them. Some people actually ended up entering the drug trade. She talks about people who became like kind of these like middlemen for drugs. She talks about people who tried to make major like $50,000 deals with people who are actually in the drug trade. And yeah, a lot of people ended up just meeting their demise through a series of either like drug deals gone wrong or random accidents. One of her friends that she mentions was on the rescue team, ends up kind of dying on a rescue, and just a bunch of other crazy things happen. So she chalks it up to karma, but she seems to be really happy that she didn't actually go through with it. But what a wild story.
Yeah, that whole chapter was so, it was kind of, it was weird for me, seeing the parallels of the OG dirtbagging to modern day bougie dirtbagging.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real, because
Yeah.
like I would love to see if these $80,000 tricked out van life vans that's going all over the country to climb. I would love to know. Would you be out there scourging someone else's food or turning in like it's just, I don't know. I am not judging,
Yeah.
but I just think the dirt bag of today is super pretentious and low key fake. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, I got money and I have the luxury of going on the road.
Yeah.
Because it's not the same. It's
not
not
the
the same.
Yeah.
But people call dirt bagging because, oh, I'm not
Living in
working
a
a
house.
traditional job. Yeah, I go shower at Walmart, but this is dirt bagging.
Because these people weren't showering.
Yeah. And a part of me feels like it's that I was at the forefront of this thing. Because climbing in the 70s and 80s, and yes, there were the predecessors and the folks before them, but these groups felt like the apex of the moment. And
Yeah.
I need to get that first ascent, or I need to get that first female ascent, or I need to get that first on-site, first FAA. Like, everybody was fighting for this thing, whereas now it's just totally different, which is fine, because I would not have done any of this. I'm just let y'all know. And I say this as someone who did consider van life,
Right.
but I also would have been that bougie van lifer. But I'm
Right.
also not showering at Target or Walmart or any other retail facility or a gym. Maybe I would have like had a membership to a climbing gym, but again, I don't. I just think that the passion for climbing for people is different, especially
Yeah.
because I don't know how, I don't think a ton of climbing gyms existed in the mid to early 70s. So because a lot of people like Lynn was introduced to climbing outside
Yeah.
first, there's just a different mentality. Like, no one has that thirst and rush to climb real rock or big rock or
Mhm.
tall walls. Whereas then now it's just like, I'm trying to get me my V5s, get that
Yeah.
V5. You know, like it's
Yeah.
just it's such a different energy. So I just
Yeah.
wonder what it would have felt like to be in that moment if, the environment was obviously a little bit different for black folks at the time. But
Yeah.
if I could just go back, because I'm sure there were very few black folks climbing in the late
Yeah.
70s
I mean, yeah,
at
if at all.
Joshua Tree or
Yeah.
Yosemite or any of these places.
And they probably
But
weren't
it's
American.
right,
Like,
right, right. So it just be interesting. Because I just think it's so different. I like
yeah.
this. It was just interesting to kind of have a look inside of what climbing was like at its thirstiest moment
Thirstiest.
versus,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's true. No, it's true. I definitely think you make a good point in that I feel like today's dirtbaggers are more likened to van lifers. Like it's like, I mean, I probably know a handful of people who might live out of their Subaru for a little while or like a smaller vehicle, but it definitely is more of a luxury experience. I think I probably can name maybe like two or three people that I would consider like
true dirtbags.
actual true dirtbaggers, like people who like maybe not to the extreme that like they were living it at this time. Like I don't think I know anybody who would be digging in a dumpster for food or like siphoning gas, or like really like scraping by on pennies. Like the dirtbaggers I know, some of them actually do own homes. um, but I think I know a handful of people who really, I guess, are a bit more hardcore when it comes to like outdoor climbing and really like chasing climbing as a lifestyle. But yeah, I agree that like it is definitely even with that considered, it's just a totally different vibe. I mean, this was like the Wild Wild West. This was like the 70s when I feel like things were just generally like a lot less regulated. And I mean, these are pioneers of the sport. So it is like a really exciting time. I agree that I probably would not be doing much of this stuff at all. Especially the soloing. Absolutely not. Like for what?
Yeah, yeah, that's a no.
But,
I
yeah.
would like to ask the listeners, viewers, whichever way you receive us,
Mm-hmm.
what is your definition of dirtbagging today? Like, what do you
Mm.
think dirtbagging means?
Yeah.
And
Or
what's
do
the
you
motivation?
dirtbag?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you dirtbag for climbing, or do you live out of your van because you don't want to be tied to one place? I'm
Mm-hmm.
just curious what that is, because yeah, I don't personally know a single dirtbag, anybody that I would truly call that. And if I did, it was very temporary. Like maybe
Mm-hmm.
they lived out of their car for a period of time, but
Mm-hmm.
like, and I mean, to be fair, they seem to do it. Maybe I could be wrong, but I feel like Lynn only really did it when she wasn't in school,
Mm-hmm.
like when she had that summer or that period of just being able to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it was just going back and forth. So maybe
Yeah.
they weren't, maybe it wasn't like a year round thing,
Mm-hmm.
but
There
it
definitely
definitely
were some
seemed.
people, it sounds
Oh
like.
yeah, who yeah, full on lived there. It seemed like they
Yeah.
just lived in Yosemite. Like they
Yeah.
had keys
Yeah.
and
They had keys.
dapped it up with all the rangers. There was people whose whole houses were,
Yeah.
on the side of a mountain. Like
Yeah.
people
It's
were
true.
just sitting there on a ledge and living life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
Wild.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is like a totally different conversation. We can definitely move on after this. But I do like, I was like, I just, especially as I was reading this part of the book, I was just like, man, like what a privilege to like just like, I'm like, I can't imagine people of color, black people, Latino people, like just getting away with
Just
any of
being
this.
there, never leaving,
Yeah.
just moving into the park.
Like they would have been out and in prison, like straight up, like straight
there
up.
would have been these magical park fees that just now randomly decided to exist. Be like, oh, you want to stay here overnight? That's gonna be $29.99. Like, come on.
Like climbing would not be a thing if it
they'd
was
be like, you can't take those cans. That's stealing. These cans are the property of the park. Like,
it would have gotten shut down so fast.
It would have taken one tourist family to complain about them either taking their food or taking their gas, and that would have been shut down. Because I'm sorry, if you are siphoning gas, are you telling me nobody's reporting that?
Yeah.
Nobody's saying like, yo, I came in here with a full tank and now I'm down to a quarter. There's no way.
Yeah.
No way. They knew what was that. The park knew what was going on. They knew what these folks were doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like she mentions that like so many of these people came like after like 20 years later are now have stand-up jobs. Doctors. You know, they're doctors and lawyers and like all of this stuff. And I'm like,
ooh,
the way this would have ruined so many lives. But good for y'all. Thanks for thanks for taking the L so that we can climb today.
But I promise you, nobody's sleeping in the park the way they were in the 70s.
No,
of any background. I'm certain.
Yeah,
that is not a thing. Not
I think it's
paying.
So much more stringent now. Yeah. Totally.
Oh, the heyday.
I know. Back in the wild, wild west. So that's the first half of the chapter. The second half of the chapter kind of gets more into the actual big wall thrills that the chapter is named after. So the second half of the chapter talks about some of Lynn's earlier experiences with big wall climbing. She mentions doing the shield on El Capitan with her friend Mari. And the way she describes it is just a really intense experience. I think up until this point, she had done relatively few big wall climbs. She's not a huge fan of aid climbing. I think she prefers a more pure form of climbing. So what is now known as traditional climbing.
Like it seems she always says she's into free climbing, which to me just sounds like on sighting on lead, on trad, you know.
Did she solo much?
She soloed a little bit. Okay. She doesn't, I think she's one of those soloers who solos what she has probably climbed in her sleep. But I don't think she was like a solo something she's never, and I'm not going to speak for Lynn, obviously. That could be wrong. And there could be so much information that has not been included in this book. Like she could probably love soloing and just understands that it's a little nuanced, and maybe I don't want to get into all of that. But, she had like a photo of soloing. Yeah. And I don't know which chapter, but she mentioned soloing that climbing the gunks that everybody talks about.
The gunks.
Yeah. And then can we first explain to people what aid climbing is? Because for the longest, I didn't actually know what aid climbing was. Yeah. And especially in the sense of big wall climbing and why you would even have to do it. Yeah. So I'm just gonna bring up the Google/AI definition of aid climbing.
Okay. Yeah. Because to be honest, I still don't think I actually fully understand.
Well, I actually
I have a high level. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it now. I mean, I get it and I understood it, especially, but they don't really talk about what they're doing in that sense. And what they do. So I'll just read the description or the definition. Aid climbing is a rock climbing technique where climbers use mechanical devices and equipment like aiders or etriers. And I'm just going to say like a Jumar, because that's what I've used before when I had a photography clinic, to assist in gaining upward momentum, especially on routes that are too difficult to free climb. So again, there's some climbs where I think they know there's sections where they can't place gear. And really the only way to get through certain sections is to aid climb, because otherwise you would not be able to do a lot of those big walls. I don't think there's cracks. There's just not places to place gear, so you can't lead it. And that's why people did it. They They just you take and so a Jumar works kind of like a gree, but it allows you to go up. So you have the Jumar connected to the rope and then a piece connected to your foot. And as you slide that up and your foot goes up, it brings your
Right.
whole body up. So you're basically just mechanically raising yourself up, almost like belaying yourself up the wall.
Right, right. And I think I've not ever used a Jumar, but like I've learned how to ascend a rope using like a sling and a carabiner and
Yep, you can
prusik,
do
and
that too.
I think it's a similar
Hmm.
concept. What I don't quite understand is how do you Jumar up the rope if you're leading? Like if you're leading on aid, how do you ascend? Does that make sense? Am I?
It does.
Hmm.
And I cannot answer that question
Okay.
because I don't
Cool.
know how the rope got up there. How did the rope get to the top?
Get up there.
I actually have no idea. I cannot tell you.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I used to think aid climbing was something that like paramedics did. Like I thought
Mm.
it was a technique that involved rescue. So I
I
am
mean, I'm sure
definitely
it probably does get used for rescue all the time. But cool. Well, yeah. Folks out there
if
listening,
somebody
if you
tell
know
us.
and you can enlighten us or walk us through it, we would definitely appreciate that. Um, but cool. So yeah, I think, and I'm wondering if aid climbing. I think, from what I understand, I think aid climbing is definitely still around, but I
Oh
think that
yeah.
it
Mhm.
is not as popular as it was. And I don't know if that's because of the introduction of sport climbing, where people were able to like drill bolts in and use protection that or place protection that way, or if those two don't really have anything to do with one another. But I guess if you're out there, if you're listening, if anyone's out there, and you can and you can help us understand that, that
Yeah.
would be awesome. But yeah, so this route, the Shields, lots of A climbing. Lynn kind of compares it to climbing Mount Everest, I guess, in terms of just like how robust and difficult of a climb it is. Um, on the day that they were planning to climb, they ended up in a queue to climb. So they were behind two other groups of male climbers that they decided to let go ahead of them. And as they're kind of like at the base of the climb, I guess just sussing it out and getting themselves set up, the people that they let go ahead of them start coming back down. And I think
Yeah.
one person did end up getting injured, but another person, the other pair, was shook and they were like, we just heard somebody take
Scream.
like a terrifying scream. We would rather not do this. And Lynn and her friend Mari realized that it was their friend Yabo who ended up taking an 80-foot fall on a nearby route that ended up scaring the climbers off the wall. We're going to learn a lot more about Yabo in the coming
Oh yeah.
chapters, but he turns out to kind of be a reckless daredevil. And it seems like he's kind of one of those climbers. I think many of the climbers of this time kind of like had this mentality where they sort of bucked death and stared it in the
Mhm.
face. But I think that he maybe took it to an extreme that even other climbers out there were like, bro, you're wilding.
Yeah.
um, but on this particular climb, I think they were doing a multi pitch and he hadn't placed any protection on his pitch. And he ended up falling and his belayer was like, oh my God, he's going to rip us out of the wall. We're going to die. By some miracle, his rope ended up getting caught on a feature on the rock. And that was enough to save them.
Somebody was trying to help them. They were like, look, I got you once. I got you twice.
Yeah.
But you're gonna
Yeah.
have to chill.
For real. Yeah. So they ended up surviving and living to tell the tale. Somehow he came out completely unscathed, no injuries or anything like that. But yeah, that is just so
And was
wild.
pretty much I feel like he was ready to go back. Like
It
let's
sounded like, I do think I remember that. I was
I
gonna
think
say
Mari's
that.
partner was like, no, bro. We're done for the day.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I would not have climbed with him. Like after that day, I would have been like, no.
I'm
That's a
so,
wrap.
yeah. We've talked about being very selective about our climbing partners and our belayers, and it does not take much for me to be like, nope.
Yeah.
I had a friend who we were climbing in the gym, and I like he got to the top, he pulled out slack, and at the last minute decided he wanted to take a victory whip. So he like let go of the slack that he had pulled out. It was like an arm's length of slack. He's a tall dude. Let go of the slack and fell at the same time. So it was like if he had just let go and given me like 2 seconds to react, I would have pulled in all of that slack. But he let go and then fell immediately, and ended up falling to the point where he fell past me, and I ended up getting pulled up into the first bolt.
Yes, that's how that works.
Yeah. And he had the audacity to blame me. He was like, you should have pulled in the slack. I was like, you didn't give me time to react at all. Like, I can't pull in the slack and catch your fall at the same time. If I lift the rope to pull in the slack, then I'm going to let out more slack. So anyways, I decided I would never climb with him ever again. Maybe I'll never talk to him again.
Yo, oh my goodness, I cannot.
Yeah, it was so stressful. But yeah, so I'm
we would have been fighting. I'm sorry.
Yeah, for real.
We would have been fighting. I would have been like, you know what? Meet me at the corner. And I don't even fight. Really don't. I'm such a lover. But you playing games with me, and you playing games with me in a gym, like
for real. And then to blame me about it, that's what really blew me. Like I was like, you could have. If you really wanted to take a victory whip, like you knew you were going to fall, you could have let the rope go and given me a moment to like pull in the slack. I have a friend that works at the gym, and she watched the video recording of it, and she was like, you did everything right. Like that was kind of a messed up thing to do. But yeah. So anyways, I say all that to say I'm very selective with my belay partners. I feel like everyone should be very selective about their belay partners. This is your life and it matters more than someone else's feelings, unfortunately. Sorry if that sounds terrible.
You only get one, despite the way Yabo lived. You get one life.
You get one. Yeah. So yeah. Where were we? So anyways, that's an aside, but getting back to the climb, Lynn talks about I think it just ended up being a really profound experience for her. First of all, I think it was really badass that she and her friend did such an enormous climb, just the two of them. Like, I think in a time, especially in a time like this, like two women kind of like tackling something this big is major. I think even today that's a huge deal, but especially back then. And they ended up spending...
who is big wall climbing these days? Like what women are big wall climbing?
I don't know, but I know people do it.
No, they do, because trust me, since I've been reading this book, I've been Googling.
Yeah.
And I've been watching YouTube videos about people climbing at Yosemite, and I'm just like, other than Alex Honnold and all the bros that I see on the YouTube, I would love to ask Lynn, like, does she feel like that representation in big wall climbing still exists? We know, and I wonder if gym climbing is one of the reasons why it's not, as popular.
I really don't know. Yeah, I actually don't know too much at all about big wall climbing. Like, I definitely am curious. I can say right now is probably not something that's for me, but I am definitely like curious to hear stories, and it would be awesome to hear firsthand from Lynn, like what those experiences were like and what subsequent experiences were like. But yeah, for that time and for today, huge deal. They ended up getting the first female ascent of the shield. And yeah, they spent 6 days on the wall at this. So I think her first big wall climb was the nose. During that big wall climb, they had ledges throughout the climb that they could like perch and sleep on. But for this climb, they were on this like steep overhang. The face of the wall, I think, was quite smooth, and so they didn't have any ledges to sleep on, so they had to bring their own porta ledges, which I can't even.
We talked about exposure. This is about as exposed as it'll ever get.
And like, okay, right? So like portaledges are terrifying. Like basically it is like essentially like a cot that you attach to your gear that is placed in the wall, and you sleep literally dangling off the side of a cliff. And I think with big wall climbing, you're either using aid or you're using trad climbing, but you're using protection that you've brought with you to place into the wall. And I trust my trad placements. Like I think that I do a pretty decent job, but I mean, I could put like 10 cams to slot 10 cams in a crack, and I still wouldn't feel safe and secure enough to like sleep on the side of a wall. I just can't imagine. But
I'm
yeah.
not gonna comment because y'all already know I ain't sleeping outside. I ain't sleeping
Period.
outside on the ground. So y'all want me to get up in the high and go to sleep?
I mean, we're talking like thousands of feet off the ground. Like
that's a hard pass.
Yeah.
No.
Mari actually had a portaledge, but Lynn did not have that gear, so she was sleeping in a hammock. Now, what this hammock was made out of, I don't know. It's the 70s, so it's probably like tweed or like some other sort of organic fiber, but it was the Wild Wild West. That's all I'm gonna say. And we also get introduced to some other like gear. The gear, I think it would be fun to play like a little gear game. Like, I don't know, like a can we curse? We can curse, right? Like a fuck, marry, kill for like 70s and 80s climbing gear. Yeah. But yeah, they're talking about copperheads, which all of this is just blowing my mind, but they're talking about copperheads, which I haven't actually seen a picture of it, but it's like it's the way she describes it is like a soft piece of copper that you kind of like temporarily hammer into a crack when other pieces of gear don't work in that position. But it kind of like holds like duct tape. So basically it can rip out at any moment.
You can't really take a fall on it.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me of like stuffing gum into like a crack, and it like, because it's soft, like copper, the way she describes it is it's soft and it kind of like you can hammer it and it wedges itself into that crack or that place, but it can pull out just as easily. There's wurps, which are these like really thin pitons that were developed by Yvon Chouinard, and I forget the other person, but Chouinard is the person who started Patagonia, which we're all very familiar with. And yeah, she talks about some of these pitches taking hours to complete. Like aid climbing, it just sounded like such a hassle because it just sounded so much more strenuous. And she talks about pitches taking like sometimes 5 hours to complete.
It's awful, and I can see why she actually doesn't like it, because there's no like technique involved. There's no thought involved. It's just, let me drag myself up this rock.
Yeah.
I did not like it either, I'll be honest, and I couldn't quite get the rhythm of the leg and it was a no for me. So I understand the tediousness and why it may not have been the most interesting form of climbing.
And what did you need to do aid climbing for? Like, when did you do that?
So we were doing climbing photography.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay,
so,
got it.
Yeah, so you just go up and you hang out on a static line and you just capture climbers climbing.
Got it. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So she I think ends up just having a really profound experience doing this. She talks about honing the voice of her intuition, just really being at peace and like very calm experiences with nature, stargazing on her hammock while she's dangling off the side of a mountain. It took the two 6 days to finish the route, but it did end up being the first female ascent, which is so badass and so impressive. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, it was awesome. So that's chapter 7. Any final thoughts on that chapter? That was just chapter 7.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we should have just read 2 chapters.
I know.
No. I mean those. Yeah. My thoughts were my thoughts.
Yeah. Totally. Cool.
Yeah. My thoughts to be honest, what I wrote in my notes was, "Where's Dean?
Where's
Where's
Dean?
Dean?"
Okay, but we are gonna hear from
We
Dean
are gonna
later
hear
on.
about Dean. We are. I know. Trust me, because I've been peeping. I like how they said, "Yo, we gonna do this, but it's just gonna be me and you this time. We gonna
Right.
leave Dean at home."
Yeah.
So,
True.
yeah.
Cool. Well, that's chapter 7. Let's dive into chapter 8. So, chapter 8, Adventures with Largo. Lynn is getting into her 4-year romance with John Long. Oh, so cute.
Yeah, said the climber.
I know.
We're gonna talk about the. I do want to talk about partners in climb.
I literally was just about to ask that. Should we get into that now or should we save that? Put a pin
No,
in it.
let's get a little recap. Let people know what happened and
Okay,
what this
cool.
is all about. Because if you don't know who John Long is, or Largo as the nickname, climbing nickname, and the relationship with Lynn, you wouldn't really know what this chapter was about.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, so she talks about just her 4-year romance with them. It started during one of their summers in Yosemite Valley. John Long, she definitely mentions him early in the story as being like this big presence, this character, always telling stories, telling stories. Sometimes they're a little embellished, but just has like a knack for really great storytelling. And they're in the arcing plot, their meetup spot, and he recites a poem that it sounds like he's written about her. That's sort of the implication. He like recites this long poem. I was like, he got bars. Like,
yeah, it was on some Love Jones tip. It was straight up like, Darius and Nina, you know this is about you. You know.
And he glances over at her. Am I your fool, Lynn? But they connect over climbing, and it seems like they fall pretty quickly in love. They seem to be really well suited for each other. They're really good at encouraging one another to push themselves. He's like a huge champion of all of her efforts, like encouraging her. I mean, he encouraged her and Mari to do the shield. He encourages her to get into weightlifting, and that improves her climbing. So they seem to be a really good match for each other. Around this time, Lynn also gets a call from one of her climbing idols, who asked her to compete in an athletic competition called Survival of the Fittest. So this kind of starts setting us up for some things that will happen in the next chapter. But she goes on to win $5,000 in this show. And she ends up competing in this show for many years. Each year she wins. She mentions that they canceled the show. They told her that they canceled the women's part of the show. They had a women's competition, a men's competition, and they canceled the women's competition. They told her because they could not find anyone to beat her, which it sounds like was true because she won every year.
Yeah. They're like, people tired of watching this now. So.
Yeah. But she ends up pushing the show's producers to increase the prize amount to make it more fair for female competitors. So it's cool. I mean, I wanted to say, like, it's cool because I feel like she it seems like she's always sort of been just a champion for women in the sport. In this instance, it ended up being increasing the prize amount to make it more fair for herself.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah. Which, to be fair, I don't think that was like her intent. I mean,
totally.
She's clearly a natural competitor, and I love that about her. And I love competition, and I thought this was cool too because it incorporates climbing, but it's not just climbing. Like, I used to do OCRs, obstacle course races. So like Spartan, and I would do Ninja Warrior stuff. So it was like climbing adjacent, but it just had a different like energy level, and it was competition based. And you know, I guess at that time climbing competitions weren't that big, so you know, it was kind of cool to get into that. And I would have totally done it. I would have done it 100%.
Wow.
If that show existed, sign me up.
Nice. Oh my God. I didn't know any of this about you. Wow. Just low key, like a bodybuilder.
Yeah. I got some photos.
That's crazy. Wow.
And I will say that's the saddest part is, as much as I did not like running, I like doing races that had obstacles in between the running.
Mm-hmm.
And it was endurance running, it was trail running, so it was like hiking,
Wow.
but running. And you would run up basically ski resorts. All these comps were at ski resorts, so you were
Whoa.
running uphill what people ski down.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it's
That's
hardcore. And
wild.
I was awful. Like, let's be real. I did not win. I didn't get close to winning. I didn't even get close to like doing good for my age, you know. But
Yeah.
but it
It was
just felt
fun.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And ironically, I did do those with a past partner. I didn't
Yeah.
like do those alone. So sometimes those things are truly encouraged, not by a man, but maybe just
Mm-hmm.
by somebody who believes that you have the ability to do those things.
Mm-hmm. Do you lift? Do you like weight lift?
I do. I do
Wow,
now.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
especially now. But
Yeah.
I didn't weightlift when I first started climbing. I
Hmm.
actually thought you didn't want to like have big muscles, and you didn't in climbing you don't really like run.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all lies. So
Hmm.
definitely
Yeah.
lift those weights. Lift those weights.
Yeah. She makes a valid point about like it being beneficial to train like the opposing muscle groups. Like we use a
Hmm.
lot of pull muscles in climbing and make it being beneficial to train the push muscles. And yeah, it's definitely something that I want to get into. I feel like I need to practice form a little bit. But it's fun to be strong. I don't know. I like being strong. I used to be really insecure about having a toned body and having like a more athletic build. Because people used to tell me I had Angela Bassett arms and like that I had
That's a
man arms.
compliment.
I know
Somebody
now.
said that
I
to
know
me too.
that.
I've heard the
Yeah.
same thing, and it's funny because like I've actually had white women come up to me and be like, "Oh my god, your arms are incredible." And I
Mm-hmm.
was just like, and it's funny because I don't I historically had never really worked arms. I just climbed. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't like do any additional, like you were saying, like I didn't strength train
Mm-hmm.
or weightlift
Mm-hmm.
for the longest. And I would be insecure because people would say that, and I'm thinking like, and I would ask like, do I look like manly or whatever, that
Mm-hmm.
whole thing? And then I just started being like, no, I look good. Like y'all are tripping.
Yeah.
And
I look healthy.
it doesn't take much. And it's
Yeah.
weird because I don't know if that's like a thing, but I get toned in my arms a lot faster than anywhere else. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot get like Beyonce thighs. I can't get
Mm.
Serena calves. Like lower body, it doesn't matter how much I lift or what I do. But upper body, I could barely do anything and do 10-pound dumbbells, and I have all this definition.
Mm-hmm.
It's really weird. I don't know.
Yeah. I think I can relate to that. I do feel like my upper body naturally tones a lot easier than my lower body. But yeah, it's cool to be strong. um, so back to Lynn and her competitions. So she, as Tiff mentions, like she credits her grit and her tenacity as her greatest advantages during these competitions. And I think she just has these moments of realizing that this is like this is where her strength really comes from, is like her determination and her like ability to hyper focus in pursuit of a goal, which is something that I really admire about you, Tiff. Like, wow, what a quality to possess. So yeah, she ends up winning the competition, and her winnings allowed her to buy a Volkswagen van with money left over. I just want to say, by
Mm.
the way, as a reminder, she won $5,000.
Did they say it was new or used?
I don't. I feel like she said it was new, but let's see.
In my visual fantasy, it was new.
Yeah.
But I tend to read books and make movies out of them in my head. It's the filmmaker
Yeah.
side of me.
Oh my God. Wait, let me find it. Okay, she doesn't say if it was new or used. She just says on a Volkswagen van. But even if it was used, like the way the car market has been, especially since the pandemic, like to the point where used cars are more expensive than new cars, you can't buy, you can barely buy tires with,
Yeah. It
with
was
three
less than
thousand
5K.
dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and she had $2,000 left over. So she uses her prize money to get the van. The van takes them all across the West for the rest of the summer. And she and John live off of the money that she earned. Basically just climbing throughout Colorado, Nevada, Arizona. She talks about FFAs that John made and some of the climbing around, maybe not FFAs. So there's a distinction that she makes between first ascents, which at this time, I think implies that the first ascent was made using aid climbing, and first free ascents, so FFAs, which are
not to be confused with first female ascents,
right? Because she has a couple of those too. But yeah, so she talks about first ascents made by John and some of the climbing ethics around first ascents, which I think would also be an interesting conversation to dive into. But towards the end of the summer, they settle in Las Vegas. She ends up enrolling in the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and does odd jobs in the service industry for money. After 3 months there, she and John seem to kind of be floundering and really unsure of their next steps. And eventually, John gets a call from the cameraman of Survival of the Fittest, that competition show that Lynn was on, asking him, to do the longest rappel for the Guinness Book of World Records TV show. Now, I'm not sure if that's different from the Guinness Book of World Records. Like, if he did that longest rappel,
it would still go in the book too.
That would go in the book. Okay, cool. Yeah. So yeah, they asked him to come out to Venezuela to do the longest rappel off of a cliff, and the couple decides to head back to Southern California. They've been talking about, it seems like they've been talking for a while about like making a life or making a living doing like adventure kind of reality television. And so they decide to head back to Southern California and see what might be in store for them. And yeah, that's kind of a summary of the chapter. It leads us into a lot of other things that happen in the next chapter. But yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are, Tiff.
Well, I think the biggest conversation point from this chapter is, like I said, partners in climb, and talking about, that living a life with somebody who is equally as yoked on climbing as you are. That is a very different lifestyle. And I have never dated a climber. And I mean, I've dated athletic people, outdoorsy people, or active people. But I think two climbers dating is a whole different mechanism of life than even just two like athletes dating. I feel like climbing is such this, I don't even know how to describe it or where I'm trying to go with it, but it just, it's like partnership on steroids. When you date somebody and you're both climbers, it's just like this never ending high. And I do think that like once they have kids and stuff, things start to sort of change a little bit and shift. But I don't know what that feels like. I do think it was cool that he was so supportive of her and the activities and the things she did. And I do think he definitely pushed her in a way in her climbing that she liked. And I think that's what kept the relationship going in the way that it did. And not to like, go too deep into what happens later on in chapter 9, but I just think it's interesting how they lived their life for climbing. That, it wasn't like I have a life and I climb. Like our life is climbing and everything else goes around that.
Yeah. The idea of climbing with romantic partners, I think that
You're like, what information do I want to share? I don't know. I wish I had some information to share. I would love to. I get it when you're in the moment. It's hard to want to share, but
yeah. I think it's just, so I think that like in theory it sounds really nice, and I think that if you're both kind of like you said, like locked in, like we are like both in this, then I think that it sounds like an amazing and wonderful thing. Yeah, because it's like, right, like we are chasing adventure. We're chasing like the thrill of climbing. And I think that like one of the nice things, so my partner is a climber, but I think he's kind of, you know, and this happens, like this is, I think, also a really common thing with climbing, but people kind of get into funks. Like people will take like years away from climbing and then come back to it. So I think he's kind of like just been feeling a little bit distant from climbing. So we haven't actually been climbing that much recently. But when we did climb together, it was really nice. Like we went out, you know, we went climbing outside a lot, quite often on the weekends. I was also really starting to get into trad climbing. So we did a lot of trad climbing together and like skills practice. And it was cool to have somebody who was experienced and who was like encouraging me towards a certain goal. And I don't know, it was just like, it was like thrilling in that way. And one thing that I really, really loved about like our energy when we climbed together is, especially in the gym, like I felt like we did a really good job of like, it was like a very, it was like almost an unspoken gentle competition. If I like a gentle rivalry, like I would notice that like, cause I think, and also what I loved is that like, I feel like we're, even though I think he could probably climb a lot harder than he does, like he is kind of conservative. Like he leads at around like 5'11", which is about a similar grade to me. But yeah, I think that like, and he's also very afraid of falling. So it's nice to like be with somebody, because I feel like a lot of men are like, no, I'm tough. Like I don't,
Yeah, I'm gonna go for it.
I'm afraid of falling or whatever. And he's like, I'm scared. And I'm like, me too. So that's kind of nice. But yeah, I would notice that like if I, you know, led a 5'11" and like he was like maybe expressing apprehension about it, I'd be like, all right, well, I'm just going to take a chance. I'm going to try to lead it. And he would see that I could do it and he'd be like, okay, I can do it too. And then he would like lead after me, or like vice versa. Like if he led a climb, I might feel more encouraged or more motivated to try. Like I just noticed that I felt braver climbing with him. Or like if he took a fall, like I would be like, all right, I'm going to take a fall. And so it felt like this like natural, organic, like sort of like we were like pushing each other in a way that felt very natural and organic. So that part was really nice. But it's also like when they don't want to climb, you know, like climbing is very much a personal journey, but when they're kind of like not in it, you're like, well,
Yeah.
by myself
Especially
now.
if you stake that one person as your climbing partner and you don't have other, you know, which I think was nice about Lynn. Lynn clearly had like a circle. Like she could go out with Mari, and yeah, it wasn't just this one person, or even Yabo. Like she climbed with Yabo and enjoyed it, and they pushed each other in a way that wasn't the same. And I feel like while I haven't dated a climber, I have climbed with people. I have climbed with other people's partners. And that there's like, I feel like there's things where guys will be jealous about, or women will be jealous about, or people will be jealous about. But climbing, it's like, oh, you gonna climb with my boo? Have But if I'm like, we about to go body surf or do something, you know, like it's just, climbing is just such this weirdly social, like, okay, yeah, go have fun. And it's not like I'm trying to steal your dude or anything. I'm just, we're on the same page and we're gonna go climb. And so it didn't seem like John was ever jealous that she was hanging out with Yabo. Even though he was like clearly in love with her and all this stuff. And so I personally like to keep my climbing separate. I low key would rather my partner not be a climber if I had to choose. I mean, obviously if I met somebody and they climbed and it was, you know, peaches and cream, I'm a roll with it. But I'm like, look at that person over at pottery class. Like, you be into something a little less high risk. It would be nice to have that balance, because I am so like, let's go surfing, let's go, you know, kayaking. Like I want to do, I want to have things in common, but climbing is just such a particular thing to have in common that it does feel almost overwhelming it's almost like too much climbing energy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a climber, you're a climber, climb, climb, climb. Ah.
Yeah.
You know, like it's a lot. Climbing comes
Yeah.
with a lot of
Yeah.
energy. And if I
It
don't
does.
want to climb, I don't want a partner who's looking at me with those,
Mm.
you don't want to climb. I want to
Yeah.
climb. If you don't believe me, what's,
Yeah.
you know, and I don't want to feel like, can't you go call Billy? Like,
Yeah.
isn't Billy available? Why?
Yeah.
You know,
I know.
but if I wasn't a climber, you wouldn't even look at me like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah. And I tend to be like, I am not monogamous in my climbing partnerships, but I only have room for so many climbing partners because, like you said, like, or like we've been saying, like, I'm incredibly selective about who I let belay me, especially when it comes to lead belaying. And
Justified.
yeah, that's just really like, there's an element of psychological safety. Even if I know this person is like a good belayer, they're going to catch me. Like, there's just this element of psychological safety where it's like, I need to mentally feel like I know this person has me. And there's very few people that I feel that way with. And it's like, once I lock in on like a partner who I trust in that way, it's like, okay, I want you to belay me all the time. I don't want anybody else. Yeah. And so, yeah, it has been like tough because, I mean, not for nothing, I've just been doing auto belays for the past. Like, I'm very grateful that my gym has auto belays. So I've been doing a lot of auto belays, but I'm ready to start getting back into lead. And so I want to start, you know, getting in touch with, like, they're not old climbing partners. Like, these are people that I climb with outside too. But I don't really climb with them in the gym quite as much, which sounds really counterintuitive because outdoors is a lot more risky. But I also climb a lot more conservatively outdoors. But yeah, I'm starting to like have to like push myself out of my comfort zone and like get back to like climbing with folks who I still trust, but just maybe haven't climbed with in a while, and like having to reestablish that trust in those climbing partners. But yeah, I think that it has its pros and cons for sure to be engaged in climbing with your partner. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. To love and climb or to not love and climb.
Yeah,
That is the
true.
question.
It's true.
All right.
Yeah.
Una mas.
Yeah. Chapter 9. So chapter 9, from Vegas to Hollywood. So in this chapter, a lot. This chapter, yeah, a lot goes on. The couple has relocated back to Southern California. Lynn is enrolled in school. John is working to get his writing/storytelling career off the ground. During this time, late 70s, early 80s, adventure shows are becoming really popular. And so Lynn gets most of her income doing stunts on this TV show. So she starts on Survival of the Fittest, as we learned in the last chapter. And that kind of ends up being a segue into other adventure shows that she's a part of. So shows, most of these I've never heard of, but it's incredible. I've heard of Ripley's Believe It or Not. I think there were probably a couple other shows that she mentioned and some that she didn't mention, but she ends up doing a lot of stunts. Some of them she does with John. She talks about climbing over the top of a hot air balloon. And one of the stunts she does is rappelling from a helicopter with John. And so, yeah, this is kind of like her bread and butter for a while. She finds herself at a certain point noticing some of the ridiculousness of some of these stunts and how senseless they are. Like, literally, like something like a hot air balloon. It's like, first of all, how do you even come up with something like that? Like building a ladder to climb over the top of a hot air balloon. And then just kind of realizing, like, why am I doing this? Like, what is the point of this? It's, at least with climbing, you get kind of like this high, you're learning about yourself, but these stunts start to feel, I think at a certain point she describes them as feeling demeaning and maybe a little bit humiliating.
Yeah.
And so her agent starts to connect her with auditions for commercials that require her to dress up in a way that feels really out of character. So she's, I think she maybe even described herself this way as like a tomboy. Like she's kind of like a little bit
Yeah.
on the grittier side. And she shows up to a commercial audition where everyone around her is like, primped up and has their makeup done and their hair done. And she's like, this is not it. This is not me. And I think that at a certain point, she kind of just basically becomes disillusioned with Hollywood, disillusioned with the stunt work, disillusioned with just being this sort of, I don't know, I don't want to use the word objectified, but it almost sounds like there is this.
Yeah, it was just not tokenism per se, but it
Yeah.
it was just kind of being almost like being this adventure Barbie,
Yeah.
and and
Yeah.
it feeling outside of herself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just this figure, and you flip my arms whatever way that you want it to go in this moment, and
Mm-hmm.
then I have to do this thing. And I think I think no matter what, over time that gets old. Although I'm a big fan of MTV's The Challenge, and there are people
Yeah.
who have been on that
Wow.
show for 20 years, and they are not tired of
Whoa.
it.
Does that show still
Yes.
come out?
Oh, it does. Yes, it does.
What?
It was for a while. It was on like Paramount Plus, and then they moved it back to MTV. I'm so sick of
Wow.
channels and cable, but yeah, so I can't watch it anymore. But yes, it is
Hmm.
still on. It was like their 41st season. Like it's yeah, the
No
challenge.
way.
Yeah, I always wanted to be on it. I might have even auditioned once or twice to be on it.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy. I did not know that that show came out before I was born. That's wild. I used to love the Real World. The Real
Yeah,
World?
it
Yeah.
was a I mean, yeah, so
They did the Real
MTV
World
is
Road Rules. Like, yeah.
that's how it
Mm-hmm.
came. That's where it came from. It was called the Real World Road Rules Challenge,
Mm-hmm.
where they would take competitors from each show,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously the people who were in the real world was like a joke. It's like
Yeah.
we're just in this house drinking all day. Like what?
Right.
And so, but then obviously, real world doesn't exist anymore. Road Rules doesn't exist anymore. So then it's the challenge.
Right.
Now they pull their competitors off of these awful dating reality shows and like
Oh.
Survivor shows that I
Mm.
actually don't watch like a lot of the network
Hmm.
adventure shows. So
Mm-hmm.
they pull people from those weird shows, and then they pull people from Love Island and like whatever. So it's still similar concept, just different reality shows.
Hmm.
But I can see how over time that could get old, and I think in that in the sense of who I think Lynn to be,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't in her DNA to be like a
Yeah.
Hollywood
Yeah.
person.
It sounds like it maybe just felt way too performative for her.
Hmm.
And she's like the real deal. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, she does continue on with um survival of the fittest. And in order to train for that, she joins the track team at her school at Santa Monica College. She really starts by kind of like training herself. And the coach of that team notices her and asks her if she could join the track team. They end up becoming good friends. It sounds like they're still friends to this day. And also after okay, so while she's on the track team, she meets someone named Karen. We're gonna circle back to Karen, but Karen ends up being someone who's had a really troubled youth, and has like a hot temper and just a kind of an intense person based on just like the background that she's had. We will definitely come back to Karen, but yeah, she joins the track team. They end up becoming friends as well. She also reconnects with her friend Yabo once she's returned to California. Um, so again, he's been mentioned earlier in the book as being an excellent climber, someone who's a bit of an outcast, but still someone who she really admires as a climber and a friend. Um,
And their just
we,
natural relationship with free climbing. Like they both seem to really
yeah,
love free climbing.
yeah, it seems like they have like similar kind of morals and ethics and values around climbing and the way that they think about climbing. But we kind of learn that Yabo and Lynn have a somewhat of a difficult relationship. She appreciates him as a friend, but he has developed an obsession with her. He is just very mentally unstable. I think he has been for a while. But she's kind of become the object of his fixation, and he starts harming himself, kind of threatening suicide, using emotional blackmail if she decides that she will not be with him. So literally she describes moments where she went over to Dean's house. We found Dean. Dean.
Well, Dean, I think, introduced them.
Oh.
So, yeah. So there was somewhere in there that said, like, Dean introduced them. And I think that's kind of where it was kind of like, oh, you really like Lynn and da-da-da-da. And that's where he's like, oh, you're right. I do like her. Like, we have so much in common and da-da-da. But yeah, somewhere it says that Dean introduced Yabo and Lynn because they are friends. Yabo and Dean are friends. Right. And Lynn and Dean are friends. So that's that common connector. Okay. And yes, I think Yabo was like staying with Dean or something during all that drama you're about to jump into.
Yeah. I mean, so he ends up like she goes over, I think, to visit Dean. And when Dean goes off to bed, Yabo kind of like corners her. I don't know if physically, but like he just kind of like starts putting a lot of pressure on her. You know, why won't you just be with me? He's like almost getting angry and hostile towards her. And then he kind of turns it on himself and he starts punching himself, banging his head against the wall, just doing these really dramatic just displays to get her attention. And to try to manipulate her essentially into being with him. At one point, she gives him a ride somewhere into Southern California, and he ends up jumping into traffic. While she's at Dean's house, he sneaks into bed with her. It's just a lot of, and these are just the things that she's told us. Like, there's probably so much more that's happened. But at one point, she's driving, and he's like opening the car, threatening to jump out into traffic. She is like, if you don't stop, I'm going to go to the police office. And he doesn't stop, so she goes to the police office. Or actually, I think she asks him when she gets to the destination that he asked her to drop him off at. He won't get out of the car, and so she decides to drive to the police office. And once she gets out of the car to like go into the police station, he like runs away. But then later on that night, he's found jumping into traffic, like basically trying to get himself killed. And the police end up arresting him. But he did a lot he really violated her and tried to use emotional blackmail to coerce and control her. And what I want to know is, where was John? Because I think they were still together at this time.
They were. Yeah, they were. Yeah. I think they had kind of that traditional climbing relationship where guys weren't bothered if their girl was hanging out with other climbers, like even if it wasn't to climb. Again, I think there's just a different mentality on how people are in relationships when they're in relationships with people who climb. I think I am making assumptions, so I'm just gonna be stressing that I think that she may not have told John a lot of those details. I'm sure John knew that Yabo was into her and was just like, I'm good. I got this. Like, this is, I'm not worried about him. He's a live wire. Obviously, he, came from a rough background. But we do this in some ways to protect all the parties involved. Yeah. I've been in situations where guys may have been inappropriate or were inappropriate. I didn't necessarily tell my partner because I was afraid of how they might react. So I didn't want them to like go psycho on somebody. Yeah. And I also tried to I think she also understood or was trying to be sympathetic to his past, to his background. And yeah, sometimes we try to create excuses for why people are certain ways and allow that to justify why they can behave a certain way towards us, and that isn't okay. Yeah. But we do it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I am, because I do feel like if people, especially Lynn's brothers, if people close to her in certain
Mm,
positions of power knew the
right.
details, I'm just curious. Now, what I will say, punk ass Dean, that's the person who, if anything, should have figured out how to shut that down in a more direct
Yeah.
way. Like, but we saw how Dean acts on the wall. Like,
Yeah.
Dean, like, nope, don't get me up here. So
Yeah.
he does feel like he's probably a bit more passive aggressive and just like,
Mm,
oh, it's
right.
okay. We're all friends, guys. Let's just be friends. Come on,
Yeah.
guys. Like, I'm just,
Right.
again, in my movie mind, Dean is just like off in the corner. Like, it's all right, but
Yeah.
I would have hoped that Dean, being the person who literally got this person into her life, would have
Hmm.
tried
And seems to
to,
be able to get through to her. Or
yeah,
through to Yabo, I'm
to, yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like if anybody should have said or done anything, it should have been Dean,
Hmm.
because that was the common denominator. I don't know that I would have wanted John to handle that. And again, this is a very sensitive individual. Like, obviously, if somebody's willing to harm themselves to be with you,
Yeah.
I don't know if integrating another male figure to try to, like, squelch it would have been good. Like, it only could
Yeah.
have been bad. And
True.
obviously they alluded or directly said, what happened to Yabo eventually. But
Mm.
I just think he was not kidding. Like, if he was gonna hurt himself, he was gonna hurt himself. It wasn't like a soft threat. I think his
Yeah.
stuff was very, very real.
Yeah. It sounds like it ran very, very, very deep. She talks a lot about his troubled past and her own kind of speculation on why he might have been obsessed with her. He had a really rough upbringing where his mother, it sounds like, maybe was addicted to drugs or just living on the street, and at some point abandoned him, like just handed him off to his father, and when he was really young, and he never saw her again, doesn't know anything about her. And so I think from that aspect, it sounds like there was some deep psychological, like, just kind of always in pursuit of this maternal figure, or this like woman. Like, I think he has attachment issues, especially with women, because of the things that happened with his mother. He describes his father as being really violent and abusive. I think his sibling or half sibling maybe describes their father as being, stern, but still very caring and generous. So there's some confusion there, but it definitely sounds like he had a really tough upbringing, which I sympathize with a lot, especially because, during this time, and particularly as a man, I'm sure it was probably really hard to like find resources for mental health. Like, at this time, I don't know if the concept of mental health was what it is today. And particularly as a man, I don't know if that was something that was easy to access. So it's tough because it's like, wow, I really sympathize. Like, people are the way they are for a reason. It doesn't obviously
Mm-hmm.
make it okay to like impact, to like cause your personal issues to be to the detriment of somebody else. But it's also like, he didn't choose to be this fucked up. Like, he, like, and I don't know if he really had the tools to like get better.
And
So
his
it's
friends
just,
didn't either. His friends didn't have
yeah.
those tools. And ultimately, all the things that he was essentially self-destructive, and
Yeah.
that's what he did with his climbing.
Mm-hmm.
He was not a happy person,
Mm-hmm.
and it did not matter if everything, if there was even an iota of the potential of him dying,
Mm-hmm.
because you could tell that he didn't value life,
Yeah.
because I don't think he felt his life had value.
Mm-hmm.
So why not push the limits of this thing,
Yeah.
and whatever happens happens, because I kind of low key probably don't want to be here anyway. So
Yeah.
it's really awful, and it's awful what Lynn had to go through. And I'm sure that's has stuck with her.
Yeah.
And, that's just not something you can shake very
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just all around like really tragic. I think just, hearing about his life, and we don't know. I'm sure we will find out. She has definitely alluded to what his fate ends up being.
Yeah.
But we haven't gotten into the details of that yet. Yeah, during one of their climbing excursions, he pulls a really dangerous stunt that causes him to drop their climbing rack. Fortunately, there are other climbers further above them on the route, so they're able to give them some gear so that they can rappel and finish the route. I think I if I remember correctly, they basically did like 3 major climbs in one day. Like they did one huge multi-pitch, then they came back down and they decided to start another one. That's, I think, when he dropped the rack, and then they rappelled down and they were just sitting there like, well, what do we do now? It's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then they were like, how about one more? And then they did another one. And that alone, like aside from all of the drama that was going on between them, I'm like, listen, 2 pitches and I'm probably like tapped out. You know what I mean? Like they did. Yeah. I mean, this is a totally different conversation that I would love to dive into, but just like the concept of like, I'm like, are today's climbers soft? Like, are we soft? We are soft. We're soft.
We'll have a series of talking points in our recap episode.
Definitely. Yeah. That's a good idea. Because I have a lot of thoughts there. But by the end of this day, I think Lynn starts to do some reflecting, and she's like, I don't think that I want to really continue having like a deep, at least climbing relationship with this person. And it sounds like she really wants to distance herself from him because his behavior is becoming more and more risky, more and more manipulative. And I think that she is, like you said, worried that he's going to self-destruct and that he's not just bluffing, and that in the future he could jeopardize his and her life. And so she kind of decides to pull back from him. And I said we would circle back to Karen. She mentions that, knowing Karen, knowing the past that Karen's had, that Karen would probably understand Yabo. And so she connects them and they end up in a relationship together. And at least for a while, it sounds like Yabo is really happy. She mentions that he would go to all the track meets. He ends up diverting his obsession from Lynn to Karen, which again is obviously not healthy, but at least on the surface, temporarily, it seems like he's really happy in this new relationship. And then at the same time, Lynn kind of comes to the realization that she and John's paths are diverging. So John is kind of like getting off the ground with his storytelling career. She's still in school, and I think just trying to decide what the next steps for her future are. And so, he goes on a trip, and she says, I think when you get back to the States, you should find somewhere else to live. It's really devastating, but it seems like they both kind of knew that this was coming and that this is what was best for them. And they decide to remain friends. And to this day, it sounds like they are friends. So it's unfortunate because it sounds like it was a really beautiful love story, but it's life and it's the way things worked out. And I'm really happy to know that they were able to salvage a really strong connection and that they still have a lot of love for each other.
Yeah, the relationship served its purpose. It served its time, and that's the end of the road. And when you feel it, I like that she was mature enough to say something. Mm-hmm. Men will be feeling a certain way and I'm just going to ride this out and see what happens. Not saying that all men are cheaters, but it's like, and then you're going to go do your own thing on the side. Mm-hmm. Like, you ain't feeling it. I'm not feeling it. Let's call it what it is before anything gets weird unnecessarily. And let that be that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that that's why they were able to maintain a friendship and a connection for so long after that. It is so hard to do the healthy and right thing, but it sounds like they did, and they were able to preserve what sounds like a really beautiful connection because of that. So, yeah.
It's almost the end of the road.
Right? That was chapter 9. Yeah. So the last chapters are 10 through 13. So we have 4 chapters left.
Yeah. We're gonna somehow get through 4 chapters. We had a longer than usual episode. Just these 3.
Yeah.
It was
I'll try to trim it down, but there was so much to talk about. Should we have done this in 2 parts?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's just gonna be that way. We don't really know.
Yeah.
We're not pre-reading these chapters, so we don't really know what the vibe is like, but it's cool, and we appreciate y'all for rocking with us. And if you're reading along with us, or you're watching or listening and reading along, definitely make sure you join in the conversation, join our book club, our virtual book club. All the info is in the description and the show notes. You can find out how to connect with us, how to contact us, all the good things. But yeah, I'm looking forward to these last few chapters because I feel like there's a lot that we don't know. I did kind of peek, and I do know like the next chapter is about heading my way to the gunks.
Ooh, okay, yes, she did mention the Shawangunks. Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah, Shawangunks.
Shawangunks, cool. Yeah. I went to the gunks once, but I wasn't a climber at that time, and I had no idea how legendary of a spot this is for climbing.
I know. You're gonna get your certification, and then have a trip out here, and we're gonna climb. We're gonna go to the spa, and we're gonna it's gonna be a whole vibe. I tried to make it happen this year, but in due time, it will happen. In due time,
yeah, it's definitely gonna happen. It might still happen this year, but yeah, I really want to get out there. But yeah, that was chapter 7 through 9. I'm super stoked to see kind of how this ends. Yeah, whatever your thoughts are, we would love to know. But I think that's gonna probably be all from us today. Yeah,
that's all she wrote. Just make sure you comment, you like, you follow the podcast on whatever you like to listen. Just stay connected with us, and we appreciate y'all for going along this ride.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Books and Boulders, an adventure podcast produced by First Outdoor Company for climbers, readers, and everyone in between. Subscribe now and join the BB Book Club.